The Victorian era undoubtedly had a very unique culture. There's one thing, however, that seems almost out of place in a modern society that permeated every aspect of Victorian life: death. The Victorians were, quite frankly put, obsessed with death. Much of this obsession stemmed from the practices of Queen Victoria. After her husband, Albert, passed away, she spent the rest of her life dressed in black and in mourning. From the moment he died, she made sure nothing at all at home was to change. Among the common population, death was very commonplace. The expected lifespan of a middle-class man was around 45. Over half of children never made it past the age of 5. Most deaths happened at homes. The family was less removed than in today's world, where most deaths happen in hospitals. The death of those close to you was an expected part of life, thus mourning was as well. Women and children were expected to wear black for months or even years while in mourning for the loss of the husband or father. All clocks in the house would be stopped to mark the time of his death. A black crepe covering would be placed on the doorknob to a room that contained the body of a deceased member of the household. To prevent one's soul from getting lost after death, mirrors were always covered. The body would be removed from the house head first, so the dead's ghost could not find its way back. Those in mourning often wore jewelry containing parts of their deceased relatives, such as hair or teeth. Memento mori is a Latin phrase meaning, remember, you must die. During the Victorian era, memento mori came to refer to death portraits, or post-mortem photography. The bodies of those recently departed would be arranged as though they were still living for a photograph. These photographs sometimes would have the still living family members pose alongside the dead. The modern idea of large public cemeteries was born during this time period. In Great Britain, graveyards, burial sites within a churchyard, were closed for burial in 1855 due to public health concerns. As a result, the park-like cemeteries we know today became the expected place to bury the dead. Funerals became a new way to show off how wealthy or popular you were in life. Elaborate grave markers and mausoleums began filling cemeteries. Glass coffins would be used for public viewing of the dead body. In some cases, professional funeral mourners could be hired to add to the solemnity of the funeral or make it seem like the deceased was more important in life. One of the greatest fears Victorians had was being buried alive, spurred on by literature such as Edgar Allan Poe's 1844 story, The Premature Burial. To counter this, safety coffins were designed with flags, bells, and air tubes to help those buried alive. In the arts, death played an important role. Much of the late Romantic era was dominated by themes of death and the supernatural. Writers like Edgar Allan Poe and Bram Stoker popularized legends about death and the undead. Medieval and Renaissance era death motifs, such as the Danse Macabre, or Death and the Maiden, were brought to a new audience in the form of music by composers like Camille Saint-Saëns and Franz Schubert. The obsession with death led to a renewed interest in the supernatural. Spirit photography, which was often just tricks of smoke and mirrors, became popular. Spiritualism and occultism took on a new life, often with Christian undertones. Mediums were a common source of entertainment, although many truly believed in them. The Fox sisters were a trio of sisters in Victorian New York who truly popularized the idea of spiritualism to the general population, although in their later years, one admitted to faking the whole thing. Seances, Ouija, and such became almost party games. By the 1890s, spiritualism and occultism split from the rest of society, as most people began to realize the practices were all tricks and little more than fun. In the end, the Victorian practices and culture surrounding death went away with the major advances in medicine in the 20th century. Today, the death culture makes the Victorian era a perfect setting for ghost stories for a modern audience. Even so, there's a lesson to be learned here. The Victorians did not fear death the same way that we do, and learned to accept it, albeit in very strange ways. While their practices may have been a little intense or even insane, they understood that death is the great equalizer. In a modern world of technological advantages in medicine and overall quality of life, we often forget that we too must pass one day. After all, memento mori. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm Matthew, and I hope I will see you next time.